does every level of existence have own conscious essence? For example, guardian spirits, even down to potentially individual genetics.
Genetic information, again, the genetic information is on the subtle level, but you're talking about what are the entities like the subtle world. Well, they all are, if you're talking about different kind of entities, they are within ourselves. But the question is, what do you imply by I am? Because if you think about yourself as a physical body, then you have only a partial or limited perspective. So various entities they exist kind of together through the subtle into kind of physical. So they have partial physical entrance or entrance into the natural world, or they can sometimes support the natural world or the certain functions. So everything has its function. Like good or bad, it's just a human notion, because it's interpretation through human experience or historical experience. But nothing is good or bad. So even when we talk about, let's say, demons and angels, right? These are just, again, these are different currents. One current propels one's consciousness to attach to the manifested matter, to tangle with it, and to experience this matter to the T. Whatever is the experience. Let's say you go into drugs, you experience and you understand how it affects your mind, your body. It eventually destroys or drains your body, and you understand that through the experience. But then you may at the end say, well, it's a negative experience because eventually it drained my body and destroyed it. Every experience has its own purpose, and it's limited by this purpose. So are the entities and all kinds of phenomena. Everything is within self, but when you realize that the self is wholesome and multidimensional, so from that perspective or from that realization, you can say, yes, the demons and the angels and all these things, these different currents are within me. You can call them in a mythological, metaphorical level way like demons and angels, or divine and demonic, and you can call it as simply bad and good, or external current, as I call it, or internal flow, right? So external flow means your consciousness projects and attaches to the limited transitory aspects, whether they are subtle or gross, or the internal, which means propels the cultivation of one's being beyond the projections. So whichever way you choose. But if, let's say, you create anything, as every aspect of consciousness, it has the seed of consciousness. And one of the seeds of consciousness is its creative aspects, and which is very fundamental. If you look at Hinduism, for instance, or at Christianity, you know something like Trinity. So this has a very fundamental, these are fundamental aspects that actually describe the qualities of consciousness. So what are the qualities of consciousness? They are the creation, first of all, the creation, the sustenance. So the consciousness itself is able to create itself, recreate, or create different kind of forms and different kind of aspects, subtle, gross, whatever. And it is able to sustain them. So there is a sustenance, there's a mechanism of sustaining itself. And then there is a aspect that consciousness, because it constantly vibrates, so nothing is static, so it recreates itself, and it also can collapse itself or destroys itself. So this is the fundamental way of understanding what consciousness is, with at least these aspects. And so everything within the creation, from minute to gross to big to whatever sizes and subtleties, has the same seed, that this whatever is there is, first of all, it is created, it has a certain purpose, and this purpose sustains it for as long as it is there, and it will be recreated or changed, or the current form will be destroyed and will be transformed into something else. So this is the fundamental point. So we have to understand that. And sometimes when we understand that, we are able to understand different processes within ourselves. So we are also able, let's say, if we understand the currents within, we understand that one current drains us and leads to physical loss, the loss of the physical body. But it doesn't mean that subtly we are lost, let's say. But some things can also lead to energetical loss, which is draining of the energy body, if there is a certain activity going on. So everything leads to something, and eventually the energy just dissolves or transforms into something else. So this is the process of creation. Now you ask me a question, if like, what are these entities and subtleties? So let's say they are there, either they're a part of the natural world or they will be a part of the man-made creation. So if they are a man-made creation, it means it's not coming from the natural world, but because the man, the human, comes from a natural world, so they have the same creative essence, so they can create something with a purpose. So they give that seed of creation to some phenomena or something. Let's say it's an entity. But this entity is of a subtle nature, but it can impact the physical through the subtle. So all the entities and all these things are on a subtle level, and they are related to thoughts and emotional forms. So all entities are some kind of clusters of thought and emotional forms that have a specific purpose. Some have a purpose to sustain, let's say, plant life. So some have a purpose to sustain, I don't know, to protect some animals. Some have a purpose to disturb humans, or maybe humans invaded their natural space, and so there is a conflict there. But everything what is happening, and we're talking here a little bit about the occult aspects, like of what is this reality of entities and fairies and demons. These are just different subtle forms. Either these forms were created from ancient times but propelled because human beings constantly were supporting these entities' lives through their thoughts and emotions, because thoughts and emotions will be their food. And certain physical experiences, if these entities attach to the energy subtle body of a human being, so whatever the human being enjoys through senses, and it transfers in the form of information to the subtle body, if these beings are attached to the subtle body, they will also enjoy that, or they will perceive that information. So, but these entities have only limited lifetime. Some of them have been a part of the creation, like the demonic forces and angelic. What are these? These are currents within consciousness. So these were created from the beginning, and so they propel this whole worldly existence, which is human and beyond human existence, natural world. So these exist there from ancient times, from the beginning. And so we have to understand these as currents. Now, all these symbols like yin, yang, and other, they just symbolize this. They show that there are different currents. But eventually, we have to transcend both currents. And the only way to transcend them is to go into equanimity, where you perceive beyond currents. Now, as long as you support any of these currents from within, they will be valid for your existence. And either they will be of a disturbing or of a supportive nature, depending on what your internal personal inclination is. And so sometimes if you discard certain thoughts, if you do not, you know, feed certain ideas, you know, ideas, let's put the entities like ideas with your thoughts and emotions, they just dissipate because they have no ability to function. The same goes with the occult attacks and magic and so on. So magic was actually created on the basis of understanding these basic fundamentals of negative and positive, and also how to a negative and positive is within the head of a magician, which has an intention and a will. And so it's basically one will against the other will. So, and entities were many times created by certain magicians or sorcerers, or people, let's say, who corrupted this knowledge and misused it for their personal gain. So that's where they became known as black magicians. So their intent is like a cluster of thought and emotion and a direction where it has to go and what it has to do. And it has a certain limited time. And so it just has a purpose to disrupt, let's say, someone. But how can it disrupt? Only through the system and the body of that victim, with their own hands, through their own mind. Because no one has actually such a power to affect one directly. But that's why it's called the occult, because it affects indirectly. And if one is not conscious, one's will be weakened by these bombarding clusters of thoughts which try to invoke negative emotions. But if these emotions are not there, there'll be nothing to invoke. So there has to be, the weakness is within that person, within that victim's individuality, which hooks onto that which has been sent. So if this mechanism is understood and one is aware of the point, of the essence of this actual life, that everything is neutral and only one supports life from within, one is able to actually understand and discern and able to discard thoughts which do not belong to them, and stop this invocation of negative emotions. And then if negative emotions are there, then negative feelings and pains, or openings, some parasitic openings, negative openings within their subtle body. If they are weak, if they are victimized, their subtle body is very weak. So their immunity will be weak, they will be prone to lead parasitic lifestyle, self-destructive lifestyle, and create more and more openings in their subtle body. And so their subtle body or energy body and their physical body will eventually, you know, fall prey to someone else or become someone else's food otherwise. And parasitic energies, which are viruses, bacteria, and parasites, all kinds of worms, will be simply decomposing that flesh that has been already rotting. Because the function of these parasitic energies to decompose, to bring that which is not healthy back to the origins. So flash back to the earth. And on an energetic level, if there are a lot of disturbing parasitic currents from within and they're propelled continuously, so one also disturbs and destroys one's subtle being and drains it, or becomes someone else's energy source. So this is what is actually constantly going on in this current evolutionary stage or day and age. Someone becomes someone else's food or someone else's energy source in the name of spirituality, in the name of good intentions. Many times good souls have certain weaknesses and fall prey to this kind of magicians in the name of spirituality or spiritual progress, and eventually they just destroy themselves from within, unless there is some other spiritual support or there is some kind of a connection within themselves that can help them to realize their weaknesses and realize their traps, and kind of disconnect from these traps, dissolve the roots or the reasons for these traps within. That's why they say that Kundalini awakening is true awakening. Spiritual is very dangerous sometimes because it can lead to delusion. Yes, it can lead because the delusion, the seeds of delusion are within. So if you consciously awake, all the seeds of delusion, if they are not refined or prior to that process refined, they will come up and they will flash in your face. And so they will show all your corruptions, all your distorted tendencies, and so they'll drag you into all sort of directions. And that's why true spirituality is very unknown, because most of the people pursue these external currents. I need to become this, I need to get a certification, become this. This is not the true path, is not the path of becoming anything. It's not the path of certificates or tags or status. It's the path of letting go disillusionment and balancing self, finding natural flow. And this is not something that can be rewarded from outside. Who looks for rewards? Victims, disempowered people look for external sources of power. And that's why they turn out to be either amateur magicians or occultists or misled spiritual beings. Spiritual because they call them spiritual new age beings and so on. Because the tendency is, the direction is not defined, clarity is not there. The biggest blessing is to have clarity. So when one defines direction, which is selflessness and simplicity and purity, one starts the process of self-refinement without trying to tag oneself or define one's own status and one's own being. And so one evolves. If one goes into pseudo spirituality, searches for power or external ways to empower self without refining the seeds of victimization and narcissism and self-centeredness, one is going to be lost in this matter and obviously drained and perish as everyone else. So true guru, again, true gurus are very rare, because true guru is not the one who has some kind of a superior position or who pushes one to do this or that. Guru is a certain, it's a connection with the higher consciousness, is a higher consciousness, and this higher consciousness cannot be fooled. So one cannot come across true guru or recognize true guru, neither within themselves nor externally, as long as they are drawn outwards and pursue false transitory aspects of the matter and the reality. So the true guru can only be perceived, and this is just a higher consciousness, this is formless essence of self that may eventually manifest the knowledge within, which becomes a true guru, or the external guide. In this case, in this rare case, one is able to evolve further as long as one continues the process of self-refinement and letting go. So this is the essential key to understanding spiritual path. And guru is the knowledge, the self-born knowledge, first of all, which one perceives from within once one refines further and further. So one's energy is not drained outwards, but is cultivated. And so, or this better not even energy, it's the essence. And so this essence invokes true understanding beyond the senses, beyond all these corrupt, limited concepts and ideas. And so one dwells in own being and realizes the essence of the world like this. And so the external teacher will only point out and help one to understand if one a little bit tangles here and there or gets into another trap, maybe a subtle trap, which is hard to recognize instantly. So true teaching and learning is, interconnected, and it's not about superiority, inferiority, following, obeying or disobeying. It's about actual understanding of the selfless process of acquiring experience of the ultimate and letting go of the experience of the limited. And so going beyond human perspectives, physical, gross, emotional, even subtle conceptual perspectives of reality. Acquiring different arts and pieces of knowledge about the natural world and the way the natural world operates and what stands behind the creation. So through this process, there is no superiority, inferiority, because the same seed sprouts in the other vessel, in the vessel of that person who learns. But that person does not perceive that, separation between the source of knowledge and themselves, because the knowledge has originated within oneself. But the knowledge itself is the guru, because the knowledge does not unfold or sprout out in impure vessels. So true self-born knowledge, spiritual self-born knowledge, only sprouts out in a pure vessel. And pure vessel is the one that vibrates selflessness and stillness, contentment. The vessel that can control one's currents or dissolve the seeds of the external parasitic currents outwards, and can maintain one's being uncorrupt, or can notice corruption instantly and curb it.